I tipped my wife's sister $5 at dinner. She told my wife to divorce me. The bill folder slid across the white tablecloth. Blair opened it first. She didn't look at the total. She looked at the tip line. $5? She said, loud enough for Milo to hear. My wife didn't correct her. I watched Blair's manicured finger tap the number like it was a mistake, like the pen had slipped, like surely I meant 50, not 5. But I didn't. I'd written it carefully, deliberately. $5 on a $112 bill. Not generous, not insulting, just small. Blair's eyes widened. She looked at Celine. Then at me. Her expression shifted from confusion to something else. Judgment. Disgust. The kind of look you give someone who just revealed themselves. Milo stood 3 feet away, hands clasped behind his back, professional smile locked in place. He'd served us perfectly all night, refilled water before we asked, brought bread warm, timed courses flawlessly. He didn't flinch at the number, just said, "Thank you for coming, have a wonderful evening." But I saw it. The slight tightening around his eyes, the way his smile became a mask, and I saw Blair see it too. Blair leaned back in her chair, swirling her wine. "Celine, you married a man who tips like he's counting coins." The waiter's smile tightened. I watched both of them, not angry, observing. She said it casually, like she was commenting on the weather. But her voice carried, intentionally. Milo was still within earshot. Clearing the table next to us, he heard. The couple at that table heard. The hostess near the door glanced over. Celine's face flushed, not with anger at Blair, with embarrassment, at me. She wouldn't look at me, just stared at her wine glass, twisted the stem. Blair continued. "I mean seriously, $5, what is 1987? She laughed. Light, airy, cruel. I didn't respond, just watched. Watched Celine's reaction, watched her cheeks redden, watched her shrink, watched her stay silent. Not defending me, not questioning Blair, not asking why I'd done it. Just embarrassed. Like I'd failed a test she didn't know she'd given me. And maybe I had. But not the one she thought. Celine's cheeks flushed. "Dorian, you could have at least made it look decent," she whispered. Not, "Why did you do that?" Not, "Is something wrong?" Just embarrassment. She leaned toward me, voice low, urgent, like she was trying to fix something broken. "You could have at least made it look decent." Not, "Why $5? Not, "What's going on?" Not, "Are you okay?" Just concern about appearance, about what it looked like, about what Blair thought, about what strangers thought. I looked at her, really looked at her, my wife of 6 years, the woman I'd built a life with, supported, loved, and I saw something I'd been ignoring for months. She wasn't concerned about me, about my reasoning, about whether something was wrong. She was concerned about image, about perception, about maintaining a facade. "It's fine," I said quietly. "No, it's not," she hissed. "People are looking. Let them." She recoiled slightly, like I'd said something shocking, like caring about strangers' opinions was normal and not caring was deviant. Blair stood, gathered her purse. Well, this was interesting. Her tone dripped condescension, and Celine didn't defend me, didn't question her sister, just gathered her own things. Silent, complicit. "My name is Dorian Kessler, and that $5 tip wasn't about money. It was the night I realized I wasn't testing a restaurant. I was testing my marriage. I'd been planning this for weeks. Not the specific amount, not the exact moment, just the concept, the test. I needed to know something, something I'd been feeling but couldn't articulate. Something about Celine, about us, about how she saw me, and I needed clarity, not assumption, not suspicion. Clarity. So I created a scenario, small, controlled, observable, a $5 tip, not enough to be generous, not so little to be cruel, just noticeable, questionable, enough to provoke reaction. And then I watched how Celine responded when she thought I'd done something embarrassing, watched whether she'd defend me, question me, trust me, or judge me. She judged me, immediately, publicly, without hesitation. And in that moment, sitting in that restaurant, watching my wife's face flush with embarrassment, I realized something. I wasn't testing the restaurant, wasn't testing the service, wasn't testing Milo. I was testing my marriage. And it was failing. This wasn't the first time Blair had measured me. She measured watches, cars, shoes, men. Blair had been doing this since the day I met her, 7 years ago, before Celine and I were even engaged. She'd looked at my car, a practical sedan, reliable, paid off, and said, "Oh, you're practical." The word dripped with disdain. At our wedding, she'd commented on the venue. Intimate, she'd called it. Code for small, for budget, for not expensive enough. When we bought our house, she'd asked the square footage before congratulating us. When I got promoted, she'd asked my salary before saying she was happy for me. Everything was measurement. Everything was comparison. Everything was judgment. And for years I'd ignored it. Told myself it didn't matter. That Blair was just like that. Materialistic, status-obsessed, but harmless. Except it wasn't harmless. Because over time, her measurements started affecting Celine. Started changing how my wife saw me. Started making her question whether I was enough, whether we were enough. And tonight, watching Blair measure me with a $5 tip and finding me lacking, I realized something. Celine was letting her. She once told Celine, "Real men don't budget, they dominate." Celine laughed. I didn't. It was at a family dinner, 6 months ago. Blair's house, expensive neighborhood, expensive furniture, expensive wine. Her husband made tech money, startup equity, 7 figures, and she never let anyone forget it. We were talking about finances. I'd mentioned wanting to pay off our mortgage early, aggressive payments, be debt-free by 40. Blair had laughed. Debt-free? Why? Debt is leverage. Real men don't budget, they dominate. She'd said it like it was obvious, like budgeting was failure, like financial planning was weakness. And Celine had laughed. Not a polite laugh, a real one, agreeing I hadn't laughed, hadn't argued, just filed it away. Another data point. Another moment where Blair's values were seeping into my marriage. Another moment where Celine was measuring me against a standard I'd never agreed to, and finding me lacking. Over months, Celine stopped asking about my projects, started asking what real estate guys made. Her tone changed before her words did. The shift was subtle, gradual. Easy to miss if you weren't paying attention. But I was. Celine used to ask about my work, about the projects I was managing, about the investments I was reviewing, about the properties I was analyzing. She'd listen, engage, care. Then she stopped asking about the work, started asking about the money. How much did that deal close for? What do those guys make? Is that good? Not interest. Comparison. And her tone changed, became disappointed, like my answers were never enough, like I was never enough. She'd scroll through Instagram, look at Blair's posts, vacation photos, designer bags, expensive restaurants, and she'd sigh. Small, quiet, but I heard it, and I knew she was measuring our life against Blair's. And we were coming up short. Not because we were struggling. We weren't. We were comfortable, secure, building wealth steadily, but we weren't flashy, weren't extravagant, weren't dominating, and to Celine increasingly that felt like failure. So when Blair chose that upscale restaurant, I agreed, because I needed to see something clearly. Blair had suggested it casually. Let's do dinner. Somewhere nice. My treat. But she'd chosen the place. Upscale. Expensive. The kind of restaurant with white tablecloths and prix-fixe menus and wine lists thicker than novels. The kind designed to impress, to display, to measure. And I'd agreed immediately, because I needed to see something. Needed to test something. Needed to know whether my suspicions were real or just paranoia. Whether Celine's shift was genuine or just influence. Whether she'd stand with me or against me when pushed. So I agreed to dinner. Agreed to the expensive restaurant. Agreed to the performance. But I had my own plan. My own test. Small, controlled. A $5 tip. Not to hurt anyone. Not to be cheap. Not to make a statement. Just to observe. To see how Celine reacted when she thought I'd embarrassed her. To see whether she'd trust me, defend me, question me, or judge me. And now I knew. I visited that restaurant dozens of times. Not as a guest, as an investor reviewing culture. What Blair didn't know, what Celine didn't know, was that I'd been to this restaurant many times. Not for dinner. For work. 3 years ago my mother and I invested in it. Silent partnership. She's the registered owner, Maris Kessler, legal, clean. But I'm the one who reviews operations, who meets with management, who evaluates staff, who monitors culture. I'd been here dozens of times, watching, learning, understanding. I knew the ownership structure, the profit margins, the staff turnover rate, the manager's philosophy. I knew which servers were struggling, which ones were thriving, which ones showed up early and stayed late. I knew the kitchen dynamics, the supply chain, the customer complaints, because that's what investors do. Because we observe, we analyze, we understand, and tonight I was using that knowledge. Not to impress, not to reveal, just to test, to see if Celine would trust me. even when she didn't understand. I know which servers work doubles, which ones pay medical bills, which ones hide exhaustion behind smiles. Milo, our waiter tonight, was one of the good ones, 26, professional, reliable. He'd been working here for 2 years, started as a busser, promoted to server within 6 months, consistently high reviews, never late, never complained. I knew his story not because I pried, but because Anton, the manager, had mentioned it during a quarterly review. Milo was working doubles, 4 nights a week, sometimes 5, covering his mother's medical bills. Cancer, stage 3, chemo, expensive. His father had left years ago, no siblings, just him, working himself to exhaustion to keep his mother alive. And he did it with grace, with professionalism, with a smile that never faltered, even when customers were rude, even when tips were small, even when he was running on 3 hours of sleep. I respected that, admired it, saw myself in it. So when I left $5, it wasn't about him. It was never about him. He'd been perfect, flawless, professional. The $5 wasn't punishment. Milo had been covering shifts for his mother's chemo treatments. He didn't know I knew that, and he didn't know that I'd already instructed Anton to give him a bonus this month. $2,000, quiet, discreet, no announcement, just added to his paycheck. Earmarked for medical expenses. Milo would think it was a performance bonus. He'd earned it. But really it was support. Because I knew what it was like to carry weight silently, to work when you're exhausted, to smile when you're breaking. And I respected people who did it with dignity. So the $5 tip wasn't about Milo. He'd be fine, better than fine. He just didn't know it yet. The $5 was about Blair and Celine. And what they'd do when they thought I was small, when they thought I was cheap, when they thought I'd embarrassed them. I needed to see who they'd become. And they showed me. The service that night was flawless. Polite, attentive, professional. The $5 wasn't punishment. Milo had been perfect, started with water and bread, explained the menu clearly, made recommendations without being pushy, timed courses perfectly, refilled drinks before we asked, checked on us without hovering, cleared plates efficiently, smiled genuinely. Every detail, every moment, flawless, professional, kind. The kind of service that deserves 20%, 25, 30. And I would have given it, would have left $50, 60 more. But not tonight. Tonight I needed something else. I needed to test, to observe, to see. So I left $5, not because Milo didn't earn more, but because I needed to see what Blair and Celine would do when they thought I was being cheap. When they thought I was embarrassing them, when they thought I was less than. And they didn't disappoint. They judged, immediately, publicly, cruelly, without question, without trust, without giving me the benefit of the doubt. And that told me everything. It was bait, small enough to provoke judgment, big enough not to insult. I needed to see who they would become when they believed I was small. $5 was calculated, precise, not $1. That would have been insulting, cruel, unforgivable. Not $20. That would have been acceptable, safe, normal. $5 was the perfect amount, enough to be noticed, enough to be questioned, enough to provoke reaction, but not enough to be cruel, not enough to hurt, not enough to actually harm. It was bait, carefully designed, strategically placed, and I waited to see who would take it, who would react, who would judge without understanding, who would assume the worst without asking. And they bit, immediately. Blair with her loud condescension, Celine with her quiet embarrassment, both of them revealing themselves, showing me who they were when they thought I was small, when they thought I was cheap, when they thought I was less than. And what I saw wasn't love, wasn't partnership, wasn't trust. What I saw was judgment, measurement, disappointment. And I realized I wasn't small, they were. Outside the restaurant, Blair didn't whisper. She announced, "You deserve better than this." We walked to the parking lot. Cool evening, clear sky, expensive cars gleaming under streetlights. Blair walked ahead, heels clicking, confident, loud. She turned, looked at Celine, not at me, at Celine, and said loud enough for the valet to hear, loud enough for the couple walking past to hear, "You deserve better than this." Not, "That was awkward," not, "What happened in there," just judgment, declaration, verdict, like she'd been waiting to say it. Like the $5 tip was just the excuse she needed. Celine didn't respond, just looked at the ground. Arms crossed, defensive, embarrassed. Blair continued, "I'm serious. A man who tips $5 on a $100 bill? That's not frugal, that's cheap. And cheap men stay cheap. She said it like wisdom, like truth, like she was helping, saving Celine from a terrible fate. And Celine still didn't defend me. Didn't question Blair. Didn't ask for my side. Just stood there, silent, letting her sister dismantle our marriage in a parking lot. Celine didn't defend me. She said, "You embarrassed me." The drive home was silent. 20 minutes. Not a word. Celine stared out the window, arms crossed, jaw tight. I didn't push, didn't explain, just drove. When we got home, she went straight to the bedroom. I followed. She turned, finally spoke. "You embarrassed me." Not "what happened?" Not "why did you do that?" It's not "is something wrong?" Just accusation. "You embarrassed me in front of my sister, in front of strangers, in front of the waiter." Her voice shook, not with sadness, with anger. $5, Dorian? Really? I had my reasons. What reasons? What possible reason justifies tipping $5 on a $100 bill? I needed to see something. See what? How cheap you could be. I didn't answer. Just looked at her. Really looked at her, and saw someone I didn't recognize. Someone more concerned with image than truth. More concerned with her sister's opinion than her husband's character. "You embarrassed me," she said again. And I realized, that's all this was about. Embarrassment. Not understanding, not trust, not partnership. Just embarrassment. Blair pushed further. "He's comfortable being mediocre." Celine stayed quiet. Blair called the next day. Celine put her on speaker. "Didn't tell me." I heard from the other room. "I've been thinking about last night," Blair said. "And I need to say this, as your sister, as someone who loves you." Pause. Dramatic. Practiced. "Dorian is comfortable being mediocre, and you're letting him drag you down with him." Celine didn't respond. Didn't defend, just listened. "You're smart, beautiful, you could have anyone, but you're stuck with a man who tips $5 and thinks that's acceptable." "Blair? I'm serious. This isn't about one dinner. It's about mindset. About ambition. About what you're willing to accept. He's not a bad person. I didn't say he was bad. I said he was mediocre. And mediocre men don't change. They just make excuses." Silence. Long silence. And Celine didn't argue, didn't defend, didn't push back, just let her sister plant seeds. Seeds of doubt, seeds of dissatisfaction, seeds of divorce. And I stood in the other room, listening, learning, understanding exactly where this was going. That silence told me more than an argument ever could. I wasn't her partner, I was her stepping stone. The silence was deafening, not because it was quiet, but because it was full. Full of agreement, full of consideration, full of doubt. Celine didn't defend me, didn't argue with Blair, didn't tell her sister she was wrong, just listened, absorbed, considered, and in that silence, I heard everything. I heard that Celine agreed, that she thought I was mediocre, that she thought she deserved better, that she was measuring me against some standard I'd never agreed to, and finding me lacking. I wasn't her partner. Not anymore. Maybe I never was. I was her stepping stone. The stable guy she married while figuring out what she really wanted. The safe choice. The backup plan. And now that Blair was telling her she could do better, she was listening. Considering. Planning. I walked into the room. Celine jumped. Ended the call quickly. "How long have you been standing there?" "Long enough." She looked guilty, caught, but not apologetic. "Blair's just concerned." "About what?" "About us. About you. About me. She thinks, I know what she thinks, and I know you agree with her." Celine didn't deny it. Weeks later, divorce was mentioned casually, like it had already been rehearsed, 3 weeks after the dinner. Celine brought it up, not dramatically, not emotionally, just casually. We were doing dishes. Routine, normal, domestic. "I've been thinking," she said, washing a plate, not looking at me. "About us, about where we're going." "Okay. I don't think we want the same things anymore." "What things?" "I want more. I want growth, adventure, success. And you think I don't? I think you're content. And I'm not." She said it simply, matter of fact, like it was obvious. "So what are you saying?" She set down the plate, dried her hands, looked at me. "I think we should consider separation. Maybe divorce. Just think about it." Divorce. She said it like she was suggesting a vacation, casual, planned, rehearsed. And I realized, this wasn't sudden, wasn't impulsive. This had been building. Blair had been pushing. Celine had been considering. And the $5 tip was just the final piece. The final proof that I wasn't enough, that I was mediocre, that she deserved better. I didn't argue, didn't fight, just nodded. Okay, let's think about it. She looked relieved, and I knew she'd already made her decision. Celine said, I don't want to struggle forever. We weren't struggling. A few days later we talked again. Sitting on the couch, she'd clearly been preparing, rehearsing. I don't want to struggle forever, she said. The statement hung there, heavy, absurd. We're not struggling, I said calmly. We own our home, we have savings, investments, we're building wealth. What struggle? You know what I mean. I don't. I mean, I don't want to worry about money, don't want to budget, don't want to be careful all the time. You want to be reckless? I want to be free. Free costs money. Exactly. And you're not making enough. There it was, the truth, laid bare. Not, I'm unhappy, not we've grown apart, just, you're not making enough. How much is enough? I asked. She hesitated. I don't know, more than this. More than a paid-off house? More than six-figure savings? More than, yes, she interrupted. More than comfortable. I want luxury. I want ease. I want... She trailed off. You want what Blair has. She didn't deny it. I didn't argue. I just called my mother that night. Maris Kessler, the legal owner of the restaurant. I didn't argue with Celine, didn't try to change her mind, didn't explain, didn't defend, just let her talk. Let her reveal herself completely. And when she was done, I said, okay, I understand. She looked surprised, like she'd expected resistance. Really? Really? If that's how you feel, we should probably separate. Oh, okay, I thought you'd fight me on this. Why would I fight to keep someone who doesn't want to be here? She didn't have an answer. That night, after she went to bed, I called my mother, Maris Kessler. 72, sharp, former businesswoman, current silent investor. Mom, it's happening. The divorce? Yeah. Did she take the bait? Completely. And now? Now we move to phase 2. You sure about this, Dorian? I'm sure. I need her to see, need her to understand what she's walking away from. All right, I'll make the arrangements. Thanks, Mom. Don't thank me. Just make sure you're doing this for the right reasons. I am. This isn't revenge, it's clarity. Clarity can be cruel, so can ignorance. She was quiet for a moment. Then, I'll call Anton tomorrow. Set it up. Perfect. I invited Celine and Blair back to the restaurant. Let's give it another chance, I said. 2 weeks later, Celine had moved into the guest room, divorce papers drafted but not filed, separation imminent. But I had one more move, one more test, one more reveal. Let's have dinner, I said. The three of us, you, me, Blair. Why? I want to make peace, end things civilly, no drama. She looked suspicious, but agreed. Okay, where? That restaurant, the one from before. Seriously? Yeah. Let's give it another chance. My treat? She hesitated, then nodded. Okay. I'll tell Blair. Blair agreed enthusiastically. Probably thought it was a chance to gloat, to see me try to perform wealth I didn't have, to measure me one more time and find me lacking. They had no idea what was coming. No idea who owned the restaurant. No idea that I'd been setting this up for weeks. No idea that this wasn't about redemption. It was about revelation, about showing them exactly who I was, and exactly who they were, and watching them realize what they'd thrown away. Anton, the manager, greeted me normally, as instructed. No titles, no gestures. We arrived separately. Celine and Blair together, me alone. I got there first, waited in the lobby. Anton saw me, smiled warmly. Mr. Kessler, good to see you. I raised a finger to my lips, subtle. He caught it, understood, nodded slightly, adjusted. Good evening, sir. Your table is ready. Not Mr. Kessler, just sir, professional, neutral, perfect. Celine and Blair arrived 5 minutes later. Blair looked around, assessing, judging. This place again, really? I wanted to make amends for last time. Noble, she said, sarcastic. We were seated, same table, same section, different server. Not Milo, someone else. By design, dinner proceeded normally. Conversation forced, awkward. Celine was distant, Blair was condescending, I was calm, observing, waiting, and halfway through the meal, Blair started criticizing, started measuring, started performing her superiority. And I let her dig, let her reveal herself, let her build to the moment that was coming, the moment that would change everything. Blair complained about Milo again, demanded better seating, demanded better wine. I nodded, calm. The service here is inconsistent, Blair announced, loud enough for nearby tables to hear. Last time, that waiter was barely competent. And the tip Dorian left? Embarrassing. She was performing, for Celine, for the room, for herself. We should have gone somewhere better, somewhere with standards. This place has standards, I said calmly. Does it? Because the staff seem undertrained. They're professionals. Please. I could run this place better than whoever owns it. Celine shifted uncomfortably. Blair, maybe. No, I'm serious. This place is mediocre, just like... She stopped, looked at me, smiled, didn't finish the sentence, didn't need to. The implication was clear. Just like you. Mediocre. I smiled back, calm, patient. You think you could run it better? Without question. Interesting. The meal ended. Bill came. I paid. Left a generous tip this time, 30%. Not for show, just normal. Blair noticed, smirked, trying to make up for last time, something like that. Too little, too late. Then she did it. The thing I'd been waiting for. She called for the manager. When the meal ended, Blair asked for the owner. Anton turned toward me. Mr. Kessler? Silence hit like glass shattering. Excuse me, Blair said, loud, imperious. I'd like to speak to the owner. Anton appeared, professional, calm. Is there a problem? Yes, the service here is subpar, the staff undertrained, and I think ownership should know. Anton nodded. I understand. Would you like to speak with the owner directly? Yes, immediately. Of course. Anton turned, looked directly at me, and said clearly, deliberately, Mr. Kessler? Silence. Complete. Total. Silence. Blair's face froze. Celine's eyes went wide. I stood, buttoned my jacket, looked at Anton. Yes? These guests would like to speak with ownership. I gathered. I turned to Blair. Her mouth was open, no words. You wanted to speak to the owner. She couldn't respond, just stared. Celine found her voice. What is this? This is my restaurant, I said calmly. Well, my mother's, Maris Kessler. Registered owner. I'm the managing partner. You own this? Silent partner for 3 years. I oversee operations, review staff, monitor culture. Blair's face drained of color. All the blood. Gone. She looked small. Smaller than I'd ever seen her. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I simply said, I left $5 to see how you treat people you think can't hurt you. Celine's face drained of color. Blair looked smaller than she ever had. I wasn't their embarrassment. I was their test. And they failed. I stood there, calm, not angry, not triumphant, just clear. I left $5 to see how you treat people you think can't hurt you, I said quietly. To see if you defend me, trust me, give me the benefit of the doubt, or if you judge me, measure me, find me lacking. Celine's hands shook. Dorian, you chose judgment. Both of you, immediately, publicly, without question. Blair tried to speak. Couldn't. The waiter that night? Miley's one of the best people I know, works doubles to pay his mother's medical bills, never complains, never falters. I respect that, so I made sure he got a $2,000 bonus this month. The $5 wasn't for him, it was for you. I looked at Celine. I wasn't testing the restaurant, I was testing you. Testing whether you'd stand with me or against me, whether you'd trust me or judge me, whether you loved me or just loved what you thought I should be. Tears streamed down her face. You married a man you thought was mediocre. You didn't know I owned this, didn't know about the other investments, didn't know because I don't perform wealth, I build it. Quietly. I looked at Blair, and you measured me with watches and cars and tips, but you never measured character, never measured integrity, never measured what actually matters. I picked up my jacket. The divorce papers are ready, sign them whenever you want, you're free. Free to find someone who performs better, who tips bigger, who dominates. I walked toward the exit. Stopped, turned back. I wasn't your embarrassment, I was your test, and you failed. Then I walked out, into the cool night, free. Not because I'd won, but because I finally had clarity. And clarity, even when it hurts, is always better than confusion.